Soyo asked Gremory how about making a deal with her. Gremory questioned what kind of deal she meant. Soyo explained that if the deal was accepted, she would provide the support needed to survive in this world and also help with her current condition. Hearing this, Gremory clung to Soyo and asked if she would truly be able to return to the demon world. Soyo responded that she could not give a complete guarantee, but stated that since she had studied reincarnation techniques and the handling of souls in her previous life, her chances were higher than anyone else in this world. Gremory paused briefly and then asked about the price, convinced the price would be something awful and demanding it be said outright. Soyo remarked that it was quite a way to put it, then calmly stated that she had 3 demands. She began with the first condition, explaining that Gremory had to ensure that her older brother would fall completely in love with her. She clarified that no charm magic could be used and that it had to happen naturally. Gremory immediately objected, pointing out that regardless of any past life circumstances, they were siblings in this life. Soyo brushed it off, pointing out that their parents were almost never around and suggesting that even the family registry was not beyond changing if it came to that. She definitely cooking something. This is not going very well in a right direction, I guess. Hearing this, Gremory rejected the idea, thinking that Soyo was extremely dangerous. She began to say something about the brother, that he only saw Soyo as a little sister, then caught herself and went quiet. Soyo took that in, said she was glad to hear it, and moved straight on to her second demand, instructing Gremory to listen until the end, assuring her that it would also be beneficial. Gremory turned away, privately concluding that Soyo was nothing short of a demon. The next morning, Kenji walked into the hallway, noting that he had barely slept. He reflected that although he thought he had resolved his problems, he now did not know what to do about Gremory. He approached her door, announced that he was coming in, and opened it while beginning to speak about what to do next. However, he stopped in shock when he saw Soyo and Gremory sitting together and talking. She greeted him with a cheerful good morning, and Gremory also greeted him. He questioned when the two of them had become so close and asked if Gremory was feeling better. Soyo answered that they had talked about many things the previous night. Gremory confirmed it and then stated that she had decided to accept the offer to renew the contract. Kenji reacted with surprise. Gremory explained that she felt uneasy without her magical power. Soyo then outlined the terms of the contract, stating that Gremory would protect her brother from anyone connected to him in Tulu. Kenji commented that the conditions sounded vague. Gremory explained that such phrasing was common when they intended to remain in this world for a long time, as it allowed flexibility in determining when the objective had been fulfilled. Kenji began to respond, but Gremory reassured him not to worry, adding that she had included a condition limiting the contract until his lifespan ran out. She also mentioned that she had originally considered setting the condition until she returned to the demon world. Kenji acknowledged this and then brought up the matter of the price. He noted that his soul was already being used as collateral and began suggesting an alternative involving his computer, but she immediately lashed out in anger, calling him an idiot and pointing out that a duchess from the demon world was offering to protect him, questioning how he could consider such a worthless price. Kenji snapped back, telling her to be quiet and insisting that he was offering the maximum he could afford, even mentioning that it included all the valuable images he had collected so far. Before the argument could escalate further, Soyo calmly placed her hand on Gremory's shoulder and reassured him that it was fine. She then clarified that they had already agreed on providing support for clothing, food, and housing. Kenji hesitated and brought up their parents, questioning how that would work. Soyo responded that she had already explained everything to them carefully. He paused to think it over and then said that if she was fine with it, Gremory admitted that she hated the situation but had no other choice. As they acknowledged the agreement, the contract began to activate, and both of them were surrounded by a glow. Kenji observed that the contract renewal appeared to be complete and said that he was looking forward to working together again. Gremory immediately asked if this meant her magic power would return. Almost instantly, her magic surged back and she reacted with excitement, confirming that her power had returned. He remarked that it was good to hear. Without wasting any time, Gremory declared that they should begin right away. As her power stabilized, her appearance shifted back to her original form. Damn, the fan servicing is too much here. She stated that she felt more comfortable like that, adding that the previous outfit had been too tight around the chest. Soyo commented that she seemed quite pleased for someone who had just destroyed her favorite outfit. Kenji tried to stay practical, saying that at least the issue of clothing had been handled for now. He then moved on to the next concern, questioning where Gremory would stay, since the guest room was not an option. He suggested alternatives like the attic or the storage room. At that moment, Gremory looked around and vaguely declared that she liked the current room, implying that she would take it. Kenji immediately rejected the idea, asking where he was supposed to go instead. He hesitated, realizing what she might be suggesting, and expressed that he did not want things to fall into place the same way they had before. Gremory, irritated, told him not to misunderstand and bluntly ordered him to give up the room. He repeated his question, still unsure where he was expected to go. She suggested that he move into Soyo's room instead. Soyo agreed without hesitation, adding that since it was part of the contract, he needed to respect her opinion. Kenji tried to object, but Soyo directly asked him if he did not want to be with her. And now their sweet home Alabama was gonna start. But he quickly denied that interpretation, explaining that his concern was about privacy. Soyo replied that she did not mind, even mentioning that it would not bother her if he watched inappropriate content. Kenji admitted that it would bother him, falling silent for a moment before reluctantly turning back to Gremory. She concluded that there was no other choice and asked if another room would be acceptable for him. Gremory agreed, adding that the current room had an unpleasant smell anyway. Kenji reacted with frustration, telling her not to say whatever she wanted. Accepting the situation, he decided they would clean the storage room and began heading out. Before they could leave, Soyo suggested that they should first go out and buy the necessary furniture. Gremory then stopped them, saying that before anything else, she wanted to hear about his past relationships, as it was related to the contract and she wanted the information directly from him. He brushed it off, saying she was overthinking things and that the number could easily reach triple digits. Soyo immediately corrected him, stating that there were 7 women she was certain would never give up on him. She then revealed that, including herself, they had formed a group known as the Round Table, making a total of 8 members. She explained that they coordinated their actions, handled enemies, and dealt with spies together. Kenji listened to this and simply remarked that it sounded terrifying. Gremory remarked that he must have been quite something in the past. Kenji responded with a pained look, admitting that his past self had only been a useless person who happened to have good looks and strong magic power. She then asked if he had any idea who the 7 women mentioned could be. Kenji told her not to underestimate him, working out that much was well within his ability. At another location, a woman entered a room and apologized for arriving late. Another girl pointed out that arriving over half an hour late could hardly be considered a small delay. A third girl dismissed it as nothing unusual and instead asked why they had been called together. The woman who had just arrived claimed that she already understood the reason, while another addressed her respectfully and asked her to take a seat first. All of them gathered around a round table as their identities were introduced one by one. Vera Cruz was known as the Blazing Radiance. Beside her sat Anita, the Vessel of Corruption. Sharastina Rebel Gracia was recognized as the Iron-Blooded Saint, while Eleuthia was called the Elegant Wind Blossom. Calzavina was referred to as the Divine Abyss of Hope, and without delay, she stated that they had identified where he had been reincarnated. Eleuthia reacted with interest, while Sharastina expressed her gratitude upon hearing the news. Eleuthia then asked what evidence supported this conclusion, and Calzavina responded by presenting footage for everyone to examine. The recording showed Kenji alongside Soyo during her fox transformation. Calzavina explained that the footage had been captured beyond the gate that had recently appeared above the royal capital. She added that the soul waveform of the boy matched his exactly. Vera Cruz commented that even after reincarnation, he still had the same foolish expression. Calzavina asked her to refrain from calling him an idiot, stating that it was unpleasant to hear. Eleuthia, on the other hand, observed that he looked cute and that it reminded her of how he had been as a child. Sharastina began shaking. She acknowledged that his appearance had changed after reincarnation, but could not accept why Soyo was with him. She slammed her hand into the table with enough force that her bones became visible. Anita reacted in alarm, pointing out that her bones were showing. Eleuthia suggested that he had always been lenient toward those close to him, and that he might have forgiven Soyo. Sharastina considered this and questioned whether she should also accept it. Anita then raised another concern, wondering why he had only opened a gate instead of returning himself. Calzavina explained that the reconnaissance familiar had been attacked by native creatures immediately after entering, and that the gate had been forcibly closed. Sharastina concluded that someone hostile to him must have interfered. Calzavina acknowledged it as one possibility. Sharastina's expression darkened and she stated flatly that they were going to retrieve him, and that anything in the path would be dealt with. Anita objected, saying that she also wanted to go and bring him back herself. Sharastina refused to yield, even to her. Vera Cruz then asked how much information they actually had about the area. Calzavina admitted that they currently had none and that a new gate was being deployed for investigation. Eleuthia stated that they would have to wait for the results for now, adding that she had hoped to deliver good news to the others. Elsewhere, Elsewhere, 2 more individuals were shown, one at home and another inside a cave. Suddenly, the connection was lost and the monitoring familiar was destroyed. Calzavina reacted in shock, confirming that the familiar had been eliminated. Anita immediately declared that she would go and investigate, disappearing from the room. Sharastina stated that she would go as well, but Aruia suggested that it would be better if the princess remained behind. Sharastina refused, explaining that Semania was like a sister to her and that she could not leave her alone. Aruia then decided to accompany them as well, reasoning that it would be troublesome if anything happened to Semania or Shelley. With that, they all departed. Vera Cruz remained behind and questioned whether everything was proceeding according to plan. When no answer came, Vera Cruz remarked that they were quite similar and that she believed she understood her intentions. However, she warned that if things went too far, she would not overlook it. With that, she stood up and left the room. After she was gone, Calzavina reflected on the comparison, rejecting the idea that they were alike. She thought that someone like Vera Cruz, who genuinely loved him even if clumsily, was completely different from her. She admitted that her own desires were far more shallow and petty, and concluded that because of that, she intended to take advantage of the situation. Shelley sprinted across the vast land at full speed, the strain of it visible through her body. Above her, Aruia kept pace from the air before descending and asking her to calm down a little despite her worry for Semania. Shelley immediately snapped back, questioning how Aruia could remain so composed when something might have happened to Semania. She stated that if anything went wrong, she would not be able to face him. Aruia responded that she did not dislike that single-minded side of her, even if it was intense. As they continued, Calzavina stood ahead holding the artifact, while Shelley suddenly lost her footing, tripping and sliding across the ground, kicking up dust. Aruia pointed out that no matter how fast she tried to move, Calzavina would always arrive first using teleportation. Hearing this, Shelley became emotional and demanded to know why she had not been told earlier. Aruia explained that Shelley's expression had been too intense to interrupt. Shelley admitted that she might have rushed things, and Aruia reminded her that as a princess, she needed to think more carefully. She then handed her a handkerchief, which Shelley used to wipe the blood from her nose. Aruia made a pointed remark about whether all her nutrition was going to her chest, reaching out as she said it. Shelley flushed and immediately demanded to know what she was doing. Aruia replied that she was simply thinking about how impressive they still were. Shelley snapped back that it was her outfit that was truly outrageous and told her to stop, pointing out that it was disrupting the order of the castle. Aruia responded that she was already holding back considerably, while Shelley insisted it was still far too indecent. After the brief exchange, Aruia turned her attention back to the situation and asked Calzavina if she had discovered anything. Calzavina explained that she had reviewed the visual and auditory data from just before but found nothing of note. The device had simply vanished in her hand. Shelley quickly asked about Semania. Calzavina stated that Semania had already moved from that location and that Anita was currently tracking her. Elsewhere, Anita was seen moving through a forest, observing that Semania was not even attempting to hide her tracks. She quickly identified a tower emitting strong magical energy and concluded that the destination was obvious. Suddenly, an explosion occurred near the tower, and a girl was seen engaged in battle with a monster. Back with the others, Calzavina noticed something, prompting concern from both Aruia and Shelley. She then revealed that the guardian golem of the 7th research tower had been destroyed by Semania. Both reacted in shock. Aruia immediately realized the implication and questioned whether it could be that location. Calzavina confirmed that it was the place where the gate to his world existed. Shelley could not understand why Semania would go there. Aruia decided that they could investigate the reason later and urged Calzavina to teleport them directly in front of the gate. But she refused, explaining that the gate's influence made it too dangerous to use space-time magic nearby. Shelley raised her voice and demanded that they at least be teleported somewhere safe nearby. Calzavina flicked her finger and teleported them both away. At the same time, Semania rushed deeper into the tower. She advanced toward the gate, but just as she approached, the gate itself transformed into a monster. Semania activated her ability in wolf form, her fingernails extending as she scratched into the wall and brought the gate down with the force of it. However, before she could go any further, Anita appeared and intercepted her, and greeted her casually. Semania immediately questioned whether Anita intended to get in her way. Anita replied that it depended on her answer, stating that if she responded honestly, there would be no interference, describing herself as a pacifist. She then asked who had told her about the gate, stepping closer as she spoke. Semania hesitated for a moment before answering that it had been their master. She pointed toward the vortex and explained that she had had been told that entering it would allow her to meet him again. Anita listened and concluded internally that it was likely a realistic illusion or some form of mind control, which meant she could rule out Vera Cruz and Shelley. Semania then asked if she could proceed. Anita agreed without hesitation, stating that she always kept her promises. As she said this, she told Semania to say hello to their master for her and pushed her toward the portal. Semania glanced back briefly before stepping toward the vortex and passing through it. Anita watched until she was gone, then remarked that she would lend a hand to make sure Semania was not dragged back right away. She smashed the tower from above, bringing it down completely with a thunderous boom. At that moment, Shelley and Aruia observed the explosion from a distance. Shortly after, Anita appeared behind them, commenting that she had not made it in time. Aruia noted that she had taken quite a while, and Anita pointed out that they had arrived using Calzavina's teleportation, which naturally made them faster. Shelley urgently asked whether Semania had entered the gate. Anita replied that, given the situation, it was likely. Shelley reacted with concern, questioning how Anita could remain so calm. She explained that worrying would not change anything at this point. Aruia added that it was probably better that Semania had gone through the gate rather than being caught in the tower's collapse. Calzavina then arrived as well, and Aruia expressed her hope that Semania would reach him safely. Back with the others, Kenji and the group were making their way through a shopping mall mid-trip. Kenji asked where else they needed to go, mentioning that he was already getting tired. Soyo replied that they had at least secured the essential furniture and that only clothes and a few remaining items were left. Kenji was surprised that there was still more to do. Gremory scoffed at him, saying it was truly pathetic. This was exactly the problem with boys. Kenji responded by telling her to carry some of the load herself. She refused, making excuse that as a bodyguard, she needed to keep her hands free. Soyo apologized and offered to carry half of the load instead. Kenji told her that she did not need to do that, but she stepped in regardless. Gremory thought to herself that it had been almost too easy. One provocation and Soyo had stepped right in. Soyo, for her part, silently encouraged her to keep it up and keep working on his feelings. As they continued, Kenji suddenly realized that he had not eaten breakfast, his hunger becoming apparent. He suggested that they head back soon and eat. Gremory commented that humans were inconvenient in that regard, but at that moment, her own stomach made a sound. She reacted with embarrassment, questioning what that meant. He pointed out that she was now almost entirely human, which explained it. She admitted that she had forgotten. Soyo then suggested that they eat out somewhere nearby. He agreed and proposed ramen, explaining that it was a staple food in Japan and that there were many good places nearby. They soon found a restaurant, where Gremory tried ramen for the first time and began eating the noodles. She found it unexpectedly delicious. Soyo responded that she was glad she liked it. Without hesitation, Gremory drank the soup in one go and admitted that she had previously mocked human food but now completely took it back. Kenji observed that she seemed to be enjoying it a lot and ordered another bowl for himself. Gremory admitted that things had not gone her way since being summoned, but ramen like this made her think it might not be so bad after all. Soyo warned her that she would gain weight, and Kenji added that if she was now similar to a human, that would naturally be the case. Gremory immediately recoiled at the idea, picturing herself going completely out of shape, yet she could not deny how good the ramen tasted. Soyo pointed out that she was being awfully relaxed for someone supposed to be keeping an eye on her brother. Gremory replied that everything had been fine so far, stating that they already had sufficient information on the target. She added that as long as the information held up, the two of them would have no trouble dealing with it. Kenji still expressed doubt, saying he did not believe anyone from that world would come after him. Soyo admitted that she hoped that was true but could not shake a bad feeling. Elsewhere, in a mountainous area, Semania lay on the ground before slowly regaining consciousness. She looked around in confusion, wondering where she was. Suddenly, she caught a scent and her eyes filled with tears as she recognized it, the scent of her master. She stood up, convinced that he was nearby. She then noticed another unfamiliar scent and wondered if it was her own, suspecting it was because she had not bathed in so long. She recalled something Soyo had once told her, that if she did not keep herself clean, their master might come to dislike her. Semania shook it off, calling her traitor, but decided to bathe for his sake regardless. Following the scent of water, she found a suitable place and washed herself, commenting that it felt refreshing. She cleaned her clothes there too before putting them back on while still wet. The wet clothes made her sneeze, but she reasoned that if she kept running they would dry by the time she met him. With that, she began running again. As she moved through the forest and reached higher ground, she caught sight of a city unlike anything she had seen before. A passing truck startled her, sending her leaping onto a nearby pole. She registered understood that there were people inside and concluded it was not a monster. Deciding not to dwell on it, she began moving across the rooftops, focused entirely on finding her master. Back in the city, Kenji trudged along carrying the shopping bags, declaring he was exhausted and wondering aloud why girls took so long to shop. Soyo apologized, explaining that she had been excited because it had been a while since they had gone shopping together. Gremory remarked that enduring such things was part of being a man and added that his attitude explained why he was not popular. The comment hit Kenji hard, and he decided to set the bags down for the moment. Soyo called out to Gremory, who responded that she was simply playing the role assigned to her under the contract. Soyo pointed out that it would be a problem if her behavior ended up making Kenji more popular. Gremory found that concern unexpected and began to wonder if Soyo herself was the reason Kenji had so little connection with other women. Soyo headed off to prepare dinner, leaving Gremory watching after her, thinking that a clingy yandere sister was a terrifying thing, and quietly wondering if all of Kenji's past relationships had really been like this. Later, they all sat down together for the meal. Kenji expressed his gratitude for the food, and Soyo responded in return. Gremory commented that while it was not as good as ramen, it was still quite tasty and asked what the dish was called. Soyo explained that it was ginger pork. After finishing his meal, Kenji stood up and reminded them to clear the dishes afterward. Soyo offered to handle the dishes herself, but he refused, pointing out that she had already done the cooking. Instead, Soyo suggested that he take care of cleaning the room, mentioning that there were still some bloodstains left to deal with. Kenji acknowledged this, and Soyo apologized, saying that it was her fault. He responded that it was not a problem, explaining that he also needed to erase the magic circle. As he spoke, Gremory had already vanished from the table. He noticed her absence and asked where she had gone. Meanwhile, Gremory had hidden herself nearby and let out a quiet breath of relief. Soyo thought to herself that Gremory radiated a truly hopeless energy, and yet somehow that in itself felt like a rare talent. And if she is around, things should progress in her favor. She let herself imagine the moment, Kenji telling her there was no one else for him, kissing her hand as he said it. Gremory tells her to return to reality. In the room, Kenji continued cleaning the stains in his room, noting that most of it had already been cleaned earlier when the magic circle was drawn. He remarked that the room now looked so clean that it no longer felt like his own. He then opened the curtains and stepped onto the balcony, deciding to check for any remaining bloodstains. By the time he went outside, it had already become completely dark. As he looked around, he saw a monster and shouted out loud. Hearing his voice, Soyo and Gremory immediately rushed toward him. Soyo asked urgently if he was alright, but when they arrived, they were met with an unexpected scene. Samania was clinging to Kenji and repeatedly licking him, while Kenji struggled to stop her, saying that it tickled. Gremory remarks, at the very least, he did not appear to be in any immediate danger. Soyo recognized her, and Kenji tried to calm Samania down, but tears began to fall from her eyes as she expressed that she had finally found her master. He called out to her, while Gremory remarked that although she understood the situation, she could only describe it in one way. Beast. Kenji denied it immediately. He had not laid a hand on her in his past life either, and demanded they stop looking at him the way they were. Samania fixed her eyes on Gremory and demanded to know if she was mocking her master. Kenji reassured her, telling her to calm down and explaining that Gremory was not an enemy. He suggested that they all settle down and talk things through. As the tension eased slightly, Kenji began by asking Samania a question. She remained close to him as he pointed out that his appearance, magic power, and everything else had changed after reincarnation. He asked how she had recognized him. Samania paused to think and then answered that she could not explain it clearly, but she recognized him by his scent and simply knew that he was her master. She tightened her embrace as she said this. He reacted, telling her that she was holding him too tightly. Samania then said that she also had something she wanted to ask. She questioned why Soyo, whom she referred to as a traitor, was with him. He gently patted her head and explained that Soyo had not betrayed anyone and that it had only been a misunderstanding. He told Samania that he was not asking her to forgive immediately, but asked if she could at least try. Gremory, observing the exchange, then raised a separate question. She asked how they were able to communicate so naturally despite being from different worlds. Kenji explained that back in his past life he had developed and permanently cast a translation spell, with its foundation built around the concept of word spirits. Gremory told him to skip the details. It sounded long, but noted that the gap between who he was now and who he had been was pretty striking. Kenji apologized in response. Samania then looked towards Soyo, who remained seated. She said that everyone had been angry and sad, and that she herself had cried until she had no tears left. Despite that, she stated that if her master wished for it, she would try her best to forgive. Soyo called out her name, and Kenji wondered if that meant the situation had been resolved. Gremory immediately disagreed, stating that there were still many problems remaining. She pointed out that Semania showing up here meant Soyo's worries had been completely founded, and if one had found a way through, the rest of his exes would not be far behind. The only way to get ahead of it, she argued, was to send Semania back now with a single message: stay out of his reincarnated life. Semania rounded on Gremory, furious, demanding to know if she was trying to stand between her and her master. Gremory met her glare and asked what she planned to do about it if she was. Kenji tried to stop them, but the tension quickly escalated. Semania declared that she would cut her down, while Gremory told her to try if she could. She stepped forward and told her to prepare. A raging wolf form surged into view behind her, and a dark aura began radiating outward in Gremory's direction. She declared that she would beat her down and send her back to the other world. However, the moment Gremory tried to summon her power, something was wrong. The aura that appeared was a pitiful shadow of what she expected. She demanded to know what had happened to the noble, beautiful aura that suited her. Kenji cut in and called her an idiot, reminding her of the contract terms. He explained that the ritual only granted her power while she was protecting him, and the moment she became the one initiating a fight, she was no different from an ordinary human. She accepted the limitation just as Semania slammed her foot down and lunged forward. Gremory quickly stepped back and told her to wait. Before the attack could land, Soyo cast a barrier, but it did nothing to stop her. She passed straight through it and turned back with a threatening look, while the other girl held her ground. Hearing her name called out, she remained focused. Soyo warned that she was being careless, explaining that even among the women of the round table, Semania ranked near the top. When it came to pure physical ability, she held the title of Frenzied Fang. That only made things worse. Semania turned on her with renewed anger, accusing her of getting in the way and declaring that this proved she was her enemy after all. Kenji immediately called out to stop her, and she turned toward him. The moment she saw him, her expression shifted. He told her that he had already said it many times. She was strong, which was exactly why she should not resort to violence every time. She hesitated, but as her eyes drifted back toward Gremory, her emotions shifted again. Tears began to fall as she suddenly dropped to the ground, kicking her feet in protest. She insisted that she had done nothing wrong and claimed that the other girl had been the one to start it. Gremory paused on the title she had just heard, while Soyo dismissed the situation as a misunderstanding, though she admitted there might be some truth to it. As the crying continued, he walked over and called her name. After a brief pause, he gently suggested that they focus on something else and asked if she wanted to eat. At the mention of food, her entire expression changed instantly. She jumped to her feet, grabbed his hand, and followed him without hesitation. Her tail wagged as her mood flipped completely, and he suggested they head to the kitchen for now. That sudden shift left Gremory staring in disbelief, but Soyo stopped her before she could say anything further. She muttered that she had already written him off as useless, but the other girl was far harder to understand. She admitted she had expected her to use every possible trick to get rid of her. Hearing that, Soyo questioned what kind of person she thought she was. When there was no answer, she told her to speak only if she was prepared to take responsibility for her words. In the end, she chose to stay silent. After that, she explained that Semania was different. Back when they were in the Gazia kingdom, a rampaging mutant thunder giant had appeared, and at the request of a nearby beastfolk tribe, the two of them had gone to subdue it. Once the creature was defeated, the tribe held a banquet in celebration, and that was where they first met her. She had been the youngest daughter of the chief, but because she could not transform into a beast, she had been treated worse than a slave and labeled a failure. When he learned about her situation, he became furious and forcefully took her in. At first, she had been terrified and unable to trust them at all, and it had taken a long time before she was finally able to open up to them. Gremory looked up and remarked that the girl being described sounded nothing like the brat in front of them, and asked whether the handsome version of Kenji in that story was just Soyo's own imagination running wild. Soyo maintained that her brother was still plenty handsome, then explained that to Semania, he had been like a parent figure. Gremory concluded that Soyo had been tolerant of her because she had not been seen as a romantic rival. Soyo clarified that Semania had felt more like a younger sister or even a daughter figure to her. Gremory acknowledged this but pointed out that the relationship had ultimately been broken. Soyo admitted that it was true. After a brief pause, Gremory threw up her hands, saying it was driving her crazy, and asked what Soyo actually wanted to do. Soyo began to answer. At the table, Semania ate happily, declaring how delicious the food was. Kenji reminded her to chew properly. He watched her for a moment, then turned serious and said that the version of him that had existed in that other world was dead and gone, gone, and that who he was now was a completely different person. Semania immediately rejected that, insisting that he was still the same master she knew. With tears forming, she asked if he hated her for coming all this way to see him. Kenji told her no, explaining that crossing the boundaries between worlds just to find him was not something he could brush aside. He asked if she had given any thought to the people back in that world who cared about her deeply. She fell silent. Kenji continued, saying that she must have come without telling anyone. Semania asked how he knew, and Kenji replied that it was because he understood her well, adding that the others would never have allowed her to come alone to such an unfamiliar place. Kenji said it was only a matter of time before someone came from that side to bring her back. When that day arrived, he wanted her to go home with them. Semania questioned whether he would say the same thing even if it were Aruia or Shelley who came. Kenji answered that regardless of who appeared, he intended to ask them to forget about him. Hearing this, Semania clenched her clothes and demanded to know why it was acceptable for Soyo to stay with him, even though she had taken him away from everyone. Kenji explained that Soyo had been reincarnated and had become a resident of this world, making her, strictly speaking, a different person from who she had been before. Semania responded by saying that she would also die and reincarnate so they could be together. Kenji immediately stopped her, taking her hand and pulling her into an embrace as he told her not to say something like that. He admitted that it might be selfish of him, but he wanted her to live and find happiness. Semania broke down as she listened to him. After a moment, she said that she understood. She then held on to him again and asked that, until the time came for her to return, he would stay by her side as her master. She promised that she would behave and listen to everything he said without complaint. Kenji relented, saying he supposed he had no choice and that the goodbye had been far too abrupt. He asked her to get her feelings in order before they came for her. Semania agreed and held onto him tightly. After some time, she fell asleep in his arms. Kenji carried her upstairs, deciding to let her rest in another room while he shared the situation with Soyo and Gremory. He left the cleaning to his future self and called it a night. Later that night, he was asleep in his room when Semania quietly entered. She approached his bed and looked at him as he slept. She reflected on how devastated and frustrated she had been when he died, but admitted that more than anything, she had felt jealous of Soyo, believing that Soyo had been the one who was able to stay by his side. And just the two of them, forever. She trailed off, unable to let the thought go, repeating herself as the feeling overwhelmed her. She then decided that if he did not become hers before the others came, she would act first. Moving closer, she lifted his blanket and brought herself to his forearm, biting down hard. She said that this way, he would belong to her and her alone, forever. She licked the mark and said she would devour him whole. The next day, Soyo called out to Kenji, reminding him to hurry to go home. He apologized to his friends and said he would head straight home afterward. As they left, Semania cut in, saying she was borrowing her big brother. One of them told her not to worry about it, and the other said they would see him tomorrow. Kenji said that leaving Gremory and Semania alone at home together felt far too dangerous. That morning, she had thrown an absolute fit about being left behind, insisting she was absolutely coming with him. He had even considered skipping school altogether. Gremory immediately shut that down, saying that if he skipped once, he would never stop making excuses, and that it was not kindness but running away. She grabbed Semania and hoisted her up, saying that her fake crying was painfully obvious. She reacted angrily, accusing her of interfering again. Kenji paused, then stepped in and lifted her from Gremory's hands, holding her himself. He reminded her of the promise she had made the day before, to be good until they came to get her. She apologized, admitting that she had been selfish. Soyo said that the matter was settled and told Gremory to keep an eye on her. She questioned why that responsibility fell to her, arguing that her main role was to protect Kenji. Soyo then told her to stay near the school for half the day going forward. She muttered that she had things she wanted to say about that, but let her have this one. Kenji observed that things seemed to have been resolved and left with Soyo. After they left, Semania sat thinking, working out a hierarchy in her head. She came to a conclusion, walked up to Gremory, and said that she would be taking care of her from now on. Gremory reacted with irritation, questioning what she meant. Later that day, Kenji and Soyo returned home and announced their arrival. However, they immediately heard Gremory shouting that she would defeat her this time, followed by Semania confidently saying that she still could not keep up with her movements. Alarmed, Kenji rushed upstairs while Soyo called out to him. He opened the door expecting trouble, only to find the two of them sitting together and playing a video game. Semania greeted him casually, while Gremory said that she had finally understood her timing and distance. Despite her confidence, she still lost the match, and Semania said that she was no match for her. Frustrated, Gremory criticized the game itself. itself. Kenji looked at them in disbelief and questioned how they had even learned to play a fighting game, asking if Soyo had taught them. Gremory said that she was a duchess of the demon realm, one who governed knowledge, and that picking up something this simple in an instant was nothing to her. Samania told her that she was weak, while she moved closer to Kenji instead. She asked him to play with her now that he had finished his work. He replied that he did not mind, but said that they should take a bath first. She insisted that she was already clean and explained that she had bathed before coming to him. He told her that even so, things worked differently here compared to where she came from, and that she would have to bear with it. She agreed, saying that she would listen since she wanted to be a good girl. However, she added that she wanted to bathe together with him. He reacted with surprise and became flustered, questioning his own reaction as he recalled that in his past life this had not bothered him, yet now he felt uneasy. He briefly considered pushing it onto Soyo, but caught himself, thinking that the two of them had only just barely managed to reconcile, if that. He then turned to Gremory for help, but she immediately refused, stating that she was a bodyguard, not a babysitter. She also asked whether he was really getting flustered over a little kid being naked. Unable to avoid it, he took Samania's hand and decided to handle it himself, leading her toward the bath. Gremory watched them go and said that she could not believe that man had ever been the master of a harem, adding that right now he just looked like a clueless kid who had never been near a woman in his life. Soyo responded that part of it was likely due to the influence of his reincarnated memories and personality, along with everything that had happened in this life. She explained that he had always been unusually mature for his age, and that he had been confessing to girls as far back as kindergarten, but had been rejected every single time. She believed that those experiences had left a lasting impact on him, causing him to develop a complex when it came to real relationships. Gremory agreed that he did not lack interest, but said that the difference between his past and present self had severely damaged his confidence. She then thought quietly that the fact Soyo had stabbed him to death probably had not helped either, and began to sweat. Soyo, noticing the direction of the conversation, said calmly that she did not appreciate people who were too perceptive or spoke carelessly. Gremory immediately backed down. In the bath, he washed Samania's hair while she commented that it had been a long time since he had done so. She seemed content and said that if it was like this, she could manage bath time without issue. He stared ahead and told himself to empty his mind, thinking that if he reacted even slightly, he would never forgive himself. She then asked when she would be picked up. He considered the situation carefully and thought that they should have already arrived by now. He suspected that something was wrong, reasoning that if Calzavina had been managing the gate, then under normal circumstances someone like Aruia or Anita would have been sent immediately. She then revealed that she had already encountered Anita. He reacted with surprise, and she explained that Anita had been standing near the vortex. She said that she had told her honestly that their master had informed her about it, and that Anita had allowed her to pass through. Hearing this, he realized that someone had used his name to manipulate her into going berserk. He turned it over in his mind, questioning what the purpose behind it was. He thought about Anita and recognized that it had not been her, but wondered why she had looked the other way. The more he thought about it, the deeper it became, until he stopped himself, realizing that he did not even need to think that hard. Something was seriously wrong. Elsewhere, Shelley slammed her hand down, veins visible from the force, saying that no matter how she looked at it, the situation was absurd. She said that someone had destroyed Calzavina's familiar without being detected and had guided Samania to a gate that even she had not known existed. Calzavina told her to calm down, but she insisted that there had to be a traitor within the castle. Calzavina questioned whether she had considered that it could be one of them, but she immediately rejected that idea, insisting that it must be the work of those who resented him and opposed them. Calzavina warned against jumping to conclusions and said that they needed to consider all possibilities. Even so, as she produced documents, she said that it was clear there were factors at work seeking to remove his influence. Shelley reviewed the information and noted that several ministers and royal guards, particularly those aligned with the Crown Prince's faction, were involved. She also saw indications that the king and queen had chosen to turn a blind eye. Overcome with emotion, a tear fell onto the letter. She called it disgraceful and expressed fury that the very person who had saved the Gazia kingdom time and time again was being disregarded. She added that it was not only him, but that her brothers, her father, and her mother were being removed from their positions as well. Calzavina told her that she must not act, but she demanded to know why, saying that because of those fools, Samania had already. She cut her off and explained that the situation extended beyond internal betrayal, pointing to evidence of foreign involvement designed to sow discord. She then asked what they should do. Calzavina responded that they needed to demonstrate their power. She explained that the Northern Empire, using the news of his death as cover, had already begun began moving troops to the border, numbering approximately 100,000 soldiers. She said that their true aim was not the political disruption, but that it was only a side play meant to weaken the kingdom's ability to respond. Moving closer, she said that if they annihilated the threat, both internal and external, all opposition would be forced into submission. Calzavina added that Vera Cruz had already been stationed at the border, and that if she chose to act, not a single one would return alive. She reflected that until now they had remained in the shadows, following his principles, but that the situation had changed and now they had to protect what he had left behind. Shelley acknowledged her foresight, but Calzavina cautioned her not to jump to conclusions too quickly. She moved to the window and looked out, saying that she had never said anything about who had manipulated Semania. She wondered who would make the next move and how they would respond, and said that she looked forward to finding out. On a mountain, Vera Cruz stood at the edge, observing the advancing forces of the Empire. She noted that they were moving forward without even declaring war, concluding that the moment they had been certain of the Great Sage's death, they had taken action. She initially blamed him, thinking that it was his own fault for being caught off guard and acting carelessly despite once being known as the Great Sage. However, her anger shifted as she rejected that thought, realizing that his lack of caution had come from genuine trust. She concluded that he had trusted them completely, and that blaming him for that was far too cruel. As her thoughts continued, she recognized that it had not just been trust but something deeper. She acknowledged that he had truly cared for them, which made her question why she kept calling him an idiot when she did not truly believe it. She wondered if it was some kind of habit or lingering feeling she could not fully understand. Shaking her head, she resolved that if she ever had the chance to see him again, she would be honest about how she felt. At that moment, an enemy suddenly lunged at her from behind. She noticed the attack, but before she could fully react, a dagger was driven into her neck. Additional enemies appeared, coordinating their actions and reporting that the situation had been secured as they prepared to move on. Despite the severe strike, Vera Cruz remained standing. As the attacker commanded not yet, she responded instantly, driving her fist into his chest and shattering his armor. The enemies quickly reorganized, forming a coordinated attack pattern. One activated teleportation and deployed a barrier to block movement, while others established communication disruption. They declared that her presence there had simply been unfortunate and prepared to eliminate her. Vera Cruz responded with anger and immediately counterattacked, overwhelming them with her strength. The soldiers realized too late the level of power they were facing, acknowledging their miscalculation. She analyzed the situation, recognizing them as an unregistered unit from the Empire attempting to eliminate witnesses and suppress information. She expressed her displeasure not only at their actions but also at the fact that they had overheard her private thoughts. Initially, she had intended to hold back and deal with them lightly, following the example he had once set. However, she abandoned that idea entirely and declared that she would no longer restrain herself and drove her sword into the ground while discarded her clothes. And changed her mind completely, she declared that they would be annihilated. With that resolve, she leapt from the cliff, fully committing to destroying her enemies. And I think author knows us too well, what we want to see. Back in the castle room, Anita said that the whole thing was already over and that it had gone badly. She said that someone had been foolish enough to provoke Vera Cruz, and that the entire Imperial army, all 100,000 of them, had been wiped out. She admitted that it was not exactly a surprise, explaining that it had always been about a show of force, and that nothing sent a message quite like an army disappearing overnight. Calzavina immediately recognized the advantage, saying that with that chaos behind them, they could now focus everything on finding him and Semania. She noted that the only problem was that the research tower was gone, and that without it, determining exactly when he existed had become much more difficult. Anita thought about it and said that if it was a time frame problem, then there was likely some flexibility. She added that she was not sure how much, but that she would hold on to the hope that it would be enough. In Kenji's room, they went over the plan once more. Semania said that she would not expose herself as a beastkin, and he confirmed that she would go out as his cousin, which she accepted without objection. Nearby, Gremory leaned towards Soyo and quietly said that since she had chosen to work on things between them, she could at least tolerate the way Semania addressed her. Soyo replied that she understood, even if she was not pleased about it. Semania turned to Soyo and thanked her for keeping her tale hidden. Kenji added that her illusion magic had been a great help, and that it was the only reason they could bring Semania outside at all. Soyo pointed out that the tale was the real issue, since it moved on its own whenever she felt something, making it easy to notice. He thought about how that would affect his social life, and Gremory remarked that the fact he was most concerned about that revealed something unflattering about his priorities. Semania said that she had been fine with him using magic on her, but he told her that he had already used up all his his mana. She smiled and said that it could not be helped. He then said that he was heading out. Gremory complained but still decided to go with him, while Soyo stayed behind and reminded them to return before dinner. The three of them stepped outside together. Semania immediately pointed at a utility pole and asked what it was. He explained its purpose, adding that it was thanks to things like that she had been able to play games, which sparked her interest. Gremory then asked whether there were any games that required more intellect rather than relying on reflexes, and Samaria admitted she had kept losing and eventually gave up. Gremory replied with pride that she relied on intellect rather than reaction speed. She then pointed at Semania and said that since they were presenting themselves as relatives, she should treat her as an older sister and show proper respect, while briefly recalling a past memory connected to taking responsibility as an elder. Semania immediately rejected that, insisting that she doesn't like her being Nia's older sister. He stepped in and told her to go along with it, reminding her that they were maintaining a cover story. Since they still had time, he suggested going to the shopping street, but just as they were about to leave, someone called out to him from behind. He turned and saw his friends approaching. They said that he had seemed distant lately, which made them suspect that he might have gotten a girlfriend. He mentioned that it had been Ryo's idea to check, while Ryo quickly denied it. You said that regardless, it had been worth coming to see for themselves. Kenji immediately denied their assumptions, telling his friends not to get the wrong idea. You replied that regardless of his denial, the situation did not look like anything romantic and seemed more like a family connection. Gremory commented that at least someone had sound judgment. One of the boys introduced himself as Yu, followed by Ryo, who introduced himself as Kenji's classmate. Kenji then tried to introduce Gremory, only to realize that he had never prepared a cover name for her, but she stepped in without hesitation, introducing herself as Reina Kuramori and pulling Semania in as her little sister. She added that Soyo would be looking after them for a while. Ryo greeted Semania warmly, while Yu turned to Gremory and, speaking as Kenji's friend, suggested that any complaints should be handled quietly rather than taken further. Kenji reacted immediately, striking him and demanding to know what he meant. Yu brushed it off casually, teasing him about his preferences, which he firmly rejected as none of his concern. The exchange ended with them laughing together. However, Semania reacted differently, showing visible irritation, which Ryo noticed. Deciding not to drag things out, he suggested that they should leave. Yu agreed, saying that it would be better to head out before it got too dark. Kenji asked where they were going, and Yu explained that they had actually intended to invite him along. They mentioned a hunting spot in the mountains, which surprised him. Yu admitted that he was not particularly interested in that kind of activity, but explained that someone they knew had reported seeing a woman's ghost there. Kenji reacted with skepticism, but they decided to go anyway. They said their goodbyes and headed off, and Gremory remarked that this would be the last time anyone would ever see them. Kenji immediately turned on her, demanding that she stop making ominous remarks like that and accusing her of jinxing the situation. She dismissed it as nothing serious. He then thought about the mention of the mountain, and when she asked if something was bothering him, he admitted that Semania had arrived through a gate located near a mountain. He told himself that he was probably overthinking it, but the thought did not leave him. Later that day, back at home, he received a phone call. Soyo asked him to pick the call, and he answered it. On the other end, he learned that Ryo and Yu had not returned home. After ending the call, she asked what was wrong. He explained that it had been Ryo's sister, and that neither of them had come home. Gremory said that she was not convinced there was a problem yet, noting that it was still early evening and that they were old enough to take care of themselves. He replied that while that was true, Ryo was not the type to ignore communication without a reason. She then recalled that he had already seemed concerned about something earlier. Soyo asked him directly what had been troubling him. He explained that if the mountain they had gone to was the same place where Semania had come through, then any demonic energy still leaking from that gate could be affecting the area. He tried to dismiss it as overthinking, but Gremory rejected that idea, saying that as a spiritual being with a physical form, she understood better than anyone that such effects were entirely possible. Realizing the potential danger, he became alarmed and decided to go check the situation himself. Soyo immediately tried to stop him and told him to calm down. He insisted that if his assumption was correct, then he was responsible for what was happening, adding that it was not just about finding them but also about resolving the phenomenon he might have caused. She stopped him and told him clearly that there was nothing she would not do for him, and that he did not have to handle it alone. Soyo turned to Gremory and asked if she would help as well. Gremory agreed without hesitation. Kenji apologized and said that determination alone meant little if he tried to do everything by himself, and that he needed them. He then turned to Semania and asked if she could track Ryo and Yu using their scent from when they had met outside. She grimaced slightly and said that she might not be able to remember it. He accepted that without pressing further and told her to stay behind. With that, he left together with Soyo and Gremory. They rushed to the mountain. He arrived tense and worried, only to find both Rio and Yu completely unharmed, fast asleep by the riverside. The relief came quickly and turned into irritation, and he demanded to know what they thought they were doing. Yu said that the early summer air had felt too pleasant and that they had fallen asleep without realizing it. Rio apologized and said that he had already contacted his sister. Soyo pointed out that nothing bad had actually happened, trying to calm things down. He exhaled, realizing that it had been a false alarm. Rio apologized again for causing trouble, and Yu added his own apology to Soyo and Gremory. Gremory said that she did not mind and that it had not been a bad way to spend the evening. He then asked if anything unusual or supernatural had happened. Yu began to deny it, but suddenly felt a sharp pain, and a memory surfaced of a woman charging toward him. Kenji called out to him, bringing him back. Yu dismissed it, saying that he must have dozed off at a strange time and felt slightly unwell. Since the next day was a holiday, he said that he would rest at home. They parted ways and agreed to meet again later. That night, Yu returned home and went to sleep. However, he was suddenly awakened by a voice greeting him. Startled, he sat up and looked toward a doll that appeared to be speaking. The voice spoke playfully as he tried to understand what was happening, and his memories began to return. He recalled that they had encountered Anita at the mountain. She had been sitting among the remains of skeletons and greeted them calmly. Yu had thought of her as something strange rather than a ghost. When asked, she said that she had simply turned the tables on those who had attacked her, calling it self-defense. Yu then asked if they could leave, but she said that they seemed like stray puppies who had wandered somewhere they did not belong. She then knocked Rio unconscious and said that she would like them to tell her a few things. In the present, the doll said that she had obtained some very interesting information from him and that she had altered his memories afterward just in case. She added that with the low density of magic, high-level spells did not work as well. She told him that if she had intended to harm him, she would have already done so. Yu stared at her, sweating, then sat down and said that he understood that she was keeping him alive because he was still useful. Anita confirmed it. He then asked her to at least tell him what she was. She asked if he truly wanted to know. A slimy creature rose from behind her as she revealed her identity as the vessel of corruption. Yu shrank back into the corner as the presence closed in. Anita told him that what he was seeing was only a fragment of her real self and that she had reduced herself to fit the space. She leaned closer and asked if he was afraid, then said that he must be, adding that most people would have screamed by now. She added that their master already knew that form and still showed her affection and held her close. Yu said that Kenji was something else entirely, and Anita agreed. She then turned her thoughts to how she could separate him from Soyo. She saw Soyo as the main obstacle, since she could not properly judge her strength, which made her difficult to deal with. She considered Semania as a possible opening, as she doubted that the girl had truly let go of her grudge so easily. She thought that if she could reconnect with her main body, she would be able to push through everything at once. She then wondered what her main body was doing. At the castle, her real body had lost contact with the fragment. She did not believe it had been destroyed and thought it was more likely that the low magic density of the other world had made maintaining the connection difficult. She considered that this might also explain why Kenji had not returned yet. At that moment, Aruia appeared and told her that there was a serious problem and that she was needed immediately. Behind her, Kaie had Sharastina restrained by the throat and was demanding that Calzavina be brought to her at once. Anita asked what had happened, and Aruia explained that Shelley had gone to check on Kaie, who had been isolating herself without eating, and that upon hearing the situation, she had lost control. Sharastina had tried to stop her and told her to calm down, but she had thrown her aside and forced her down. She said that she had no intention of waiting and that she wanted her reunion immediately. When Sharastina objected and said that they needed to confirm the situation in the other world first, she responded that she would take the rest of the castle hostage instead. Sharastina refused and activated a barrier to restrain her. At the same time, Anita intervened and used her power to weaken her and restrict her movements. She warned that Kenji would not be pleased if he learned of this. Calzavina arrived using teleportation and assessed the situation. She said that they were supposed to be maintaining order in his absence. Anita then asked about the progress of the investigation and said that she could not completely blame Kai for reacting that way. Calzavina explained that the other world was far more advanced technologically, but that its magic density was almost non-existent. She added that for individuals like herself or Vera Cruz, such an environment would be fatal, and asked whether they were still willing to go. Kai said that she would go regardless of the risk. Anita remarked remarked that it seemed unfair, while Aruia said that sending her alone would be too dangerous. Calzavina decided that Aruia would accompany her as a chaperone, and that Sharastina would also go, as she would be less affected by the low magic environment. Sharastina accepted immediately. Anita suggested playfully that she should be allowed to go as well, but Calzavina rejected the idea, saying that she had already had her fill. She added that reconstructing the gate would take a few more days and told her to prepare in the meantime. Anita left reluctantly, but Aruia called out to her, indicating that she wanted to speak with her further.